What is your real life experience with it's hard to win an argument with a smart person, but it's dang near impossible to win an argument with a stupid person. My mom's entire argument tactic was to interrupt the other person as soon as they opened their mouth. It didn't matter if you were calm and reasonable and respectful. The moment sound came out of you, she would come in with greater volume. She usually didn't have much to say, so she would literally repeat herself just to interrupt you. Even if you paused and let her speak, if she was out of stuff to say, she would wait quietly until you try to talk again, then interrupt you with something she already said. She wasn't even subtle about what she was doing. She was prideful about how great of a debater she was. She thought this childish and disrespectful crap actually made her strong and respectable. I don't think she ever realized that she didn't actually win any arguments, but simply wore the other person down until they gave up on a constructive adult conversation with her. My aunt does the same thing. We used to give up and let her win, but as I've gotten older I've gotten stubborn and don't let it go. My sister glaring at me the entire time. I know someone who legitimately stood up in the middle of a meeting about her child abuse in the child protection offices and yelled at everyone the child deserved to be stabbed because she knew not to play Operation So Loud. At that moment in reality, there wasn't anything the child protection officer, her boyfriend, brother and sister, or the grandparent or father could say to her. I don't think there are other words in existence appropriate for that situation. I could only say, couldn't help myself. What the actual frick? I don't know how many child and family team meetings I've attended that devolved into a shouting match when someone is told they need anger management. I always wanted to record the outburst to play back later as an explanation of exactly they think there might be an anger problem. Had to coach a guy for sleeping in a freezer. He moved all the food off a shelf and took a nap. Woke him up, pulled him into the office and he denied it over and over again. Finally he said, "Why would I sleep in a freezer?" And I just yelled, "I don't know." Sounds like he just wanted to sleep in the freezer to see if he would get away with saying that it was ridiculous and that he would never do that. I deal with entitled wealthy investors every day. The only thing worse than arguing with a stupid person is a stupid wealthy person who thinks they are important. Used to work at a small community bank. This sounds like my board and I maintain they all just say things for the sake of saying something so that they're contributing to the discussion. A friend in school was convinced he could find a triangle whose angles wouldn't add up to 180 degrees after learning the rule in class. I just couldn't get him to understand that if he finds some shape that doesn't fit the definition of a triangle, then by definition he has not found a triangle. I was having an argument with my aunt and she said something I asked her to define what meant. She told me to never ask questions because it was a stupid thing to do. I rolled my eyes, left and never talked to her again besides the obligatory exchanging of pleasantries at family gatherings. She sounds like the sort of person who starts with the answer and figures out how to fit it to the question. We should reorganize the warehouse racks so that the cases with the greatest velocity are at the top. Excuse me, but do you perhaps mean mass or even volume? No, I mean velocity. Don't insult my intelligence again. Okay, but none of these boxes are moving at the moment. Their velocity is 0. Across the board. You and me are going to talk with HR, the same ops manager a couple of weeks later. What do you think you're doing? Just moving boxes. It's the only thing that we do in this warehouse. You're not on process. One best way is that we pick up, label, then move one box at a time. You're saying that if I label 5 of these boxes, each of them less than 1 pound, then move them to this cart all at once, I will be performing my job at a slower pace than if I did each and every one individually? Yes. You are expected to be on process and this is the best process. I don't quite see how the wasted energy of turning back and forth between the pallet and the cart more than necessary results in more efficient work. Could you give me a demonstration? Number. It's your job to move boxes, not mine. Fine. On my honor, I will henceforth move every single box with the exact process you just detailed. A few days later he and my area manager pull me aside because my production had dropped by 43%, which honestly is a testament to how hard I was trying to actually make his process work. Walmart is a horrible place to work. So that the cases with the greatest velocity are at the top. My instinct is thinking he meant the products that sell the quickest. but then if they were at the top then there would be more effort bringing them down more often. Met a flat earther. I think he was just going along with it to be contrarian. He said the whole thing was a conspiracy. Tried asking him where the edge was and he said it was a ring of ice. Tried explaining that for his conspiracy to work literally hundreds of thousands of people around the world and various space agencies would need to keep the secret, yet not one has come forward with the truth. Didn't work. Tried telling him we have literal photos and clips of the round earth spinning. He said it was a lie. Not matter how much logic the rest of us threw at him, he just refused to accept it. We all came away thinking less of him for being so stubborn. Watch Beyond the Curve. It's a very entertaining documentary on just how stubborn they are. Spoiler: they literally prove the earth is round on 2 separate occasions while trying to prove that it's flat, and then go, we aren't ready to give up just yet. Using metaphors to simplify a complex subject. I realized, if the person you're arguing with isn't the brightest light, she will usually get stuck with the metaphor and escalate it, while completely losing sight of the actual subject of the disagreement. Combine that with a big ol' cup of whataboutism and you might as well could be talking to a wall. I stopped using metaphors on Reddit. People nitpick all the ways the metaphor differs and completely miss the point. It wouldn't be a metaphor if it was identical. My mom yells "be at the rest CDs" quite literally like a toddler whenever you defend yourself. If you're always advocating for the devil, you might be the devil. My mom's go-to opinions can't be wrong even when discussing facts. Used to have a friend who would legit argue with you about your own experiences and tastes, opinions, and pretty much anything else. Some examples include insisting that neither my husband nor I could possibly remember the 11th of September because we were only 11 at the time. Insisting that no one could possibly remember anything from before the age of 10. Said I was lying that I can remember every teacher I ever had and have memories from as young as 3 years old. Tried to start an argument that polio isn't contagious. If you liked some piece of art, clothing, home design or other purely opinion-based thing that was simply not her taste, you were wrong. When I expressed an interest in living abroad for some of my life, she tried to sit me down and lecture me that she knew better than me about whether or not I would enjoy it. Her conclusion was that I wouldn't. Refused to acknowledge that professional Adobe products are now only available by subscription, and insisted that I must be wrong in telling her so. Began explaining why pattern making for clothing would be too hard for me to learn. Moments after I explained to her what it was, she had never heard of it before and had no idea how clothes were made. Started an argument with me that my nephew is not adorable, and that no one really finds children cute, they just pretend to. Wouldn't hear of the possibility that someone could go to Iceland and enjoy themselves because her brother had a stopover at the airport there and was very bored. Got upset when our friend group didn't approve of her brother calling a black man a NR because he needed to make the guy really angry. There were so many more but I can't remember them all. Every interaction with her was an exercise in frustration. Her only tactics for debating or arguing were repeating the same stupid points over and over again after they'd been combated, making you feel like you're emotional or unreasonable when she said something incredibly hurtful and offensive, and talking over everyone while being very condescending and rude. Thank God you do not consider this person a friend anymore. Just toxic as heck. In school for my now job, at the beginning there was a woman sitting next to me. I was like 22 or 23. She was easily 40. Fine. At the beginning we got along well. Then she started to desperately search for similarities. It got annoying. Then she always asked me about stuff the teachers said while the teachers still talked. Basically wanted a live translation from me but without changing the language. Of course resulting in both of us not being able to listen anymore. No way to explain to her she should just listen herself and at least try to understand. I would have happily tried to help her afterwards when I had time to hear it myself. First clue, she was not so bright. I was incredibly over her, but stayed nice. Then we were supposed to work in pairs on a small but not easy task. Of course, she didn't understand a word. I explained one thing, don't remember what, to her for the umpteenth time. Fine. Sometimes it's cursed. You just don't get one thing. But then she proceeded to tell me I was wrong. Fine as well, if she can tell me why. But no, It was a matter of I have no clue what's up with that. I don't understand it in the slightest, but I just know you're wrong about it just because. Spoiler, I was not wrong. I reread it 10 times in our sources, found different sources, tried to break it down to basically elementary school levels. She stopped listening to me and just continued to argue I was wrong because I was wrong or something. Remember, that woman was more than 15 years older than me and around 40. I lost my patience, stopped talking to her and just presented the task by myself. She did not admit anything after the fact. Shortly after she changed seats after a different incident, and not long after that she dropped out. Surprise surprise. Both my friends were hella smart, but one of them refused to believe that gravity actually exists. He was convinced that if the Appleseed didn't discover gravity, we as a society would have the ability to play with brain power, and I stopped trying to talk him out of this, but the other friend was almost foaming at the mouth with rage over this conversation. Both of my friends were hella smart. Well, one of them might have been. IDK about the other. Long ago, over 20 years ago, had a lovely beat my head against the wall discussion with a young lady who had no children of her own and no experience raising children with disabilities, and she proceeded to tell me that my wife and I needed to be firmer and more strict with our autistic son so that he would snap out of it and start talking and stop acting autistic. I cannot remember how exactly I phrased my response, and it was in Spanish, not my native language. But it was basically a polite version of pound sand, you have no idea what you are talking about. I appreciate the advice, thanks, and leave it at that. Most people usually stop at that point. If they don't, then just tell them that you'd rather talk to someone competent on this matter. It usually pisses them off and it lets you derail the convo from the topic very quickly. My family has this deceptive maneuver where they slowly change the argument to something they can make you wrong about. Picking the one detail they know can turn the argument in their favor and slowly pivot the conversation away from what the real argument is about and into a situation where now they're right and I am the one who's wrong for asking them to stop trying to give us their junk. All I want is for you to ask before dropping stuff off in our house because we don't have room for your old flower pots. We don't flower pots. Well, that got out of hand. In that situation, they make you feel like the butthole because beggars can't be choosers and just be happy you're getting stuff for free, but we didn't beg for anything, you just brought this trash over because you don't have the room for it. What makes you think we do? Your house is twice as big and... Okay, I'll stop. Fresh out of college, I lived with a few people who I didn't really know before moving in. One of the roommates was this slightly older guy who was dating a woman similar in age. She was over our place one day and somehow contrails came up, except she referred to them as chemtrails. You see, I was really minding my business watching something on the TV, but I had just graduated with a degree in atmospheric science and I'll be damned if I'm going to share living space with someone who refers to contrails as chemtrails. So I say, you mean contrails? No, she didn't. She meant chemtrails. Because the government is spraying us all with some mind-controlling substances or whatever she claimed it to be. So I explained to her the reason why airplanes produce a contrail, which was easy to do considering how much of my time and money went to learning about the dynamics of the atmosphere. Except she didn't believe that some younger woman could possibly know more than her, which is when she pulled out her trump card. I live right next to an airport, so I can see that when they first take off there's no trail. It's not until they get to a certain height that they switch it on. This was literally right after I had explained how pressure and temperature affect humidity and condensation, and how pressure and temperature are much lower at higher altitudes. I realized then that I could not convince this person that they were wrong. Luckily he and she moved into another place together not long after. I live right next to an airport, so I can see that when they first take off there's no trail. It's not until they get to a certain height that they switch it on. She somehow didn't notice that clouds typically form in the sky rather than at ground level either, I suppose. My friend's boyfriend didn't observe daylight savings time. He understood that the rest of us did. He just didn't. I said okay, but if we agree to meet for dinner at 5 o'clock, we're both using my 5 o'clock, right? I tried explaining that I observe daylight savings exactly twice a year. Once when I set my clocks back, and once when I set my clocks forward. The rest of the time it's a non-entity in my life. He, however, by not observing daylight savings, has to observe daylight savings at all times every day, as he constantly has to worry about converting his internal time to whatever time the rest of the world is using. I was unable to convince him of that logic, however, as he is a stupid person. Anytime my Phil tries to start a discussion, thinly veiled attempt to have a gotcha moment against me or my wife, as soon as he starts losing, the actual specifics of the argument go out the window and he starts character attacks or makes wild accusations about what is or isn't allowed in the discussion. He tried to support the claim that Kamala Harris can't be president because her parents weren't citizens, so I pulled up the US Constitution on my phone and read the amendment for presidents, and rather than engage with that, he said I was wrong. The paper that his sister read was right, and I don't really know anything. I just know whatever my phone knows. Ooh, this one. Imagine looking up something and checking for yourself. Nope. You're just branded as a slave to your whatever the phone says. I work in medicine, so I see this every day. Some choice quotes, all from different patients. Insulin may work for others, but it just does not work for me. I don't want a biopsy. I know I don't have cancer because I read a book on it. I really feel like you are able to give me pain meds. You're just being difficult. After spending an hour saying how bad her health is and how poor she feels, I don't want any vaccines. I know my own body and I only put natural things in my body. That's why I am so healthy. Spoiler, she was very, very ill. No, I don't have any mental illness. I am sick. You need to do a blood test to find out what's wrong. PTSD, that's what's wrong. I heard a story where a visitor asked a patient if they were afraid of getting addicted to insulin. Yep, addicted to insulin. I opened up about my inability to have children, and how frustrated I am with people recommending things that won't work for me because the problem isn't infertility. A woman started up about how I should try going vegan to cure my infertility. I reminded her that wasn't the issue. She pressed on, saying she didn't believe in miracles, but for her it was like hitting a switch. She's had 2 babies since going vegan and she couldn't be happier. Maybe I should try it. I said no. She got offended that I refused to even consider. And before anyone tries it here, I'm not infertile. Trying to carry a baby would destroy my body, Breaking Dawn style. Plus I'm on 2 medications that corrupt my eggs like a computer virus. So I really cannot have children. After talking to Stone, a friend, about how smoking weed impairs your brain's formation of memories, he said that doesn't happen to me. I don't remember forgetting anything. Dude, we had this conversation 4 times already. Woman, there's something like a 30% chance that fraternal twins are identical. Me, do you perhaps mean there's a chance for DD, chorionic diamniotic, each baby has their own placenta and amniotic sac, twins to be identical? There's a chance that fraternal twins are identical. For the record, fraternal twins happen when 2 different eggs are released and fertilized. Identical twins are when 1 fertilized egg splits. So fraternal twins can't be identical twins. I'm still not quite sure what that woman was on about, but she's made that same odd claim several times in the group we're both in. My guess is that she was confusing the medical term for identical twins with twins that strongly resemble each other. Oh, I never win. When I do win, it's only after the fact of the argument ceasing and finally being told I'm right a few hours after the argument is over. Hate it so much. It doesn't make me feel good about winning an argument at all. You are doing it exactly right and you just don't get it yet, buddy. The only goodness you should feel from winning an argument is that you have helped someone better understand crap. And when they come back a while later, it means your words of wisdom have hit home. Keep doing what you are doing and just feel good about it. So, someone told me she deleted pictures she took of a tree because she had a feeling the tree would be offended by having its picture taken out of fear its soul might be taken. Even if we assume souls exist, that trees have souls, emotions, memory, thought, the ability to communicate, and eyes to see what you are doing, how would they have any idea what a photo is? Or know that your phone can take photos? Or a religion and complex thought to believe in souls? Like, just what? The only argument I've ever won with a stupid person was one outside of the actual argument by making them think it's their idea. 99% of the times stupid people have disagreed with me, it was because they are too proud to ever admit they're wrong. Arguing makes them dig in their heels. If they get to feel like it was their idea, they are willing to change their mind. Very like children. I had an argument with my garage door installer. He was installing the motor and I noticed that it was 1-stroke 4 horsepower. I immediately told him that I had ordered the bigger motor. He said that this was the biggest. I then proceeded to tell him that I ordered the 1-stroke 2 horsepower engine. He told me that 1 is too small. This is bigger. WTF. I said, how do you figure that? He said, everybody know that 4 is bigger than 2, in the most sarcastic voice. There was no convincing him that 1-stroke 2 was bigger than 1-stroke 4. I finally just had to call his boss. My father is a lawyer. He's very good at his job. He was made to do it. He loves to argue. I was raised in a family where arguing is just the way it is. It's okay, and if you make a valid point then you can easily win. I put when here for some god-awful reason LMAO. My father over. I have had many a proud moment going back and forth, then making a point that causes a look, then a smile, then a fair point. Sometimes if it really won the day he'd come back a later, a day, a week or a month even, and speak on how he looked into what I had said. He'd value my input and build off of it. I always felt like I was ready for the world because my dad turned the screws on me and I'd win. I'd lose happily when proven wrong. The last sentence of what I wrote is where I've found the most trouble. I will hold a position and when shown better information change my position. I have been told more than once you're not allowed to so quickly change. I lost a friend over it. Not much of a friend, but the case still exists. Also, I found no matter how smart my father was and no matter how difficult it was to get him to agree with me, it never got me ready for someone who thinks being told to wear a mask for the protection of others infringes on their personal rights, or that black peoples are subhuman. Not all of the befuddlements are this grandiose, mind you. Those two are just apple pick to say. I long for the days when I thought the hard part was winning my father's favor. Cause now I just find the world is full of stupid people mad at that fact but calling it something else entirely. I do not even try. Stupid people never elaborate or add nuance to what they say. They simply repeat themselves. Sometimes louder. You cannot fix stupid, thank you. Ron White. Saved everybody a bunch of time. My mom and heating air conditioning. Her reasoning is that if every room is open, the hot air has places to circulate so it will be hotter. Now keep in mind we only used about 5 rooms in our 12-room house. So my logic was that if we close the rooms we aren't using, many of which are in an unfinished basement with holes in the walls, then we would only have to heat the rooms we use and then we don't have to keep it at the mid-60s during winter. Well, one week she went on vacation and left the house to me, so I decided to test that theory, and wouldn't you believe it, not only was it warmer but the heating bill was also lower for that week. She of course was having none of it, so she opened up all the rooms again, then it got cold and the heating bill went up. I have an example of trying to argue with a smart person and a stupid person at the same time. So, a friend of mine and I were having a fun argument about classic history. We were talking about Alexander and whether or not the Western Mediterranean was ever going to be a possibility. For context, I think that if he would have been able to hold Persia and Egypt, and that the wealth from those conquests would have rallied enough troops. We're knee deep in the discussion when our co-worker comes up and starts spouting off that Alexander only conquered as much as he did because of his Spartan soldiers. Everything we said after that just fueled this man's love for Sparta and his need to tell us about his romanticized version of the place. Sparta wasn't a part of the Macedonian army. That doesn't invalidate his point about Alexander's conquests. No, it just meant that Sparta was so badass that they couldn't be conquered. Sparta's regular army dwindled by a factor of 10 between the Peloponnesian Wars and the days of Alexander. They just got 10 times as badass. Haven't you seen 300? The conversation slowly devolved until we were just talking about Sparta. It became him trying to defend his homosexual, pedophilic matriarchal utopia for nearly the rest of our shift. He stayed firm through boy love, economic recession, lack of military technology, and religious fervor. Only the fact that Sparta was de facto run by a small group of wealthy women seemed to disturb him. I feel like I was gaining some ground with my buddy, But to this day I think Sparta dude still jacks off to 300 as a nightly ritual. Only the fact that Sparta was de facto run by a small group of wealthy women seemed to disturb him. Yay. Cersei Lannister was their queen and ruled Sparta after the Golden Company failed. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.